Back in January, we published our draft strategy for 2050, and during February and March, we were out and about talking to people about the document. We had to cancel our remaining public meetings, but we wanted to share this slideshow with those that were unable to hear from us then. This presentation is a summary of the background and content of the strategy for 2050. We'd encourage you to read the full document, which has lots more detail on the different issues introduced here. The strategy and several other background documents are available on our website at mkfutures2050.com. We've also put a list of questions and answers on the website, covering some of the points raised most often at the public meetings we held. We've also extended the engagement period, so you've got more time to send us your thoughts. Check at mkfutures2050.com for details of how to get in touch. We really hope that people can see the positive opportunities that this strategy presents. It's about creating a stronger future for Milton Keynes and the wider area, and our proposition for how that could happen. The idea for preparing our strategy for 2050 came from the MK Futures 2050 Commission and their report Making a Great City Greater, which recommended 6 big projects for the future of the city. For example, the work we've been doing to develop the new university, and also that we create this strategy for 2050. Since then, Milton Keynes Council has adopted a council plan with an ambition of 500,000 people in a thriving city, the greenest and most sustainable in the world. We also have the sustainability strategy that states the stretching ambition to be carbon neutral by 2030 and carbon negative by 2050. Existing and emerging local plans for Milton Keynes Borough and in neighbouring areas already allocate a significant amount of development. The area has committed to sustained growth, and this strategy helps to set out how that could continue. On a wider geography, there has also been a lot of interest in this part of the country with the work that the National Infrastructure Commission did to look at the Oxford to Cambridge arc and the government's support for about 1 million new homes along that corridor. Finally, the strategy takes a holistic view of the future of the area. It sets a vision for the sort of place we want to create, including thinking about jobs and skills, health of communities, and how people will move around. The strategy has been informed by several evidence documents, in particular a strategic growth study that looked at opportunities on a boundary blind basis. That is, it looked across local authority boundaries, reflecting the way that people live their day-to-day lives. Developed from that evidence, the strategy puts forward a recommended pattern of growth that is considered to be sensible and sustainable by looking at what is already happening or planned in the area, including big infrastructure projects like East West Rail. Our strategy for Metropolitan Milton Keynes therefore includes areas within Aylesbury Vale, South Northamptonshire and Central Bedfordshire. It is intended to be a conversation starter, and we are very clear that this strategy does not commit those neighbouring areas to grow in this way. That will all need to be considered through the local plans for those areas. It's also important to remember that the strategy is not a statutory planning document, but it will inform the development of our new local plan that will replace Plan MK. It's really important to plan ahead for the future and set out a flexible framework for future decisions. Through existing and emerging local plans, there are already around 41,000 new homes committed, and we know that the demand will continue in the future. It would be naive to think that somewhere like Milton Keynes could choose to stop growing. It would in effect commit to economic decline, mean that housing becomes even more affordable for the people that struggle the most, and mean that we aren't providing homes for the children of the people who already live here. By taking a long-term view and planning properly for growth, we can make sure it provides opportunities for all of us. Also, we can't just wait for all of the houses that are in plans to be built before starting to think about what happens beyond that. It can take many years to get major developments into a local plan and then through the planning application process, and then construction can take several years too. And we need to be able to plan ahead for the infrastructure, services and facilities needed for growth. Setting out our ambitions helps us to secure investment in all of these things. There are things that are really successful about this area. The green character is well loved by residents, we have a strong and growing economy, and there are some great jobs and companies in the city. It's still pretty easy and fast to drive around, and we have a diverse population that is welcoming to newcomers. Being a new town, most families have moved here in the last 50 years. But there are some elements that mean that not everyone gets to share in all of those successes. Housing has historically been pretty affordable. But over the last decade or so that has changed, and many people are struggling to afford to buy or rent here. Congestion is getting worse, and if you don't have access to a car and rely on public transport, it can be difficult to get around and access all the opportunities that might otherwise be available to you. Our skills levels and attainment in schools is about average, not as good as we'd want it to be in a place that has great ambitions for its residents. And the climate emergency means we all need to do more to reduce our environmental impact and think about how the way the city works can help with that. And we know that some of our infrastructure needs investment. To address these challenges into the future, we have come up with these 6 ambitions. A big part of the strategy is about making sure the growth of the city is inclusive. It needs to benefit everyone, and the ambitions are focused around that as an overall aim for the future. One of the starting points for the work on the strategy was to think about the sorts of places we want to create for the future. One element of this is the communities that people live in and making sure there are homes that are affordable for everyone who wants to be here. We know that even affordable housing isn't always affordable for the local people based on their income. So through the strategy and the work the Council is already doing, we want to build new council homes and go beyond the policy requirements for the amount of affordable housing built on council-owned sites. Different ways of managing the development process could give us some better options to be able to secure greater investment in truly affordable homes, and we'll be looking at those models in detail to see what could work here. We need to widen the mix of types and tenures of homes too, so there are choices for the different sorts of households we'll have in the future. There will be more smaller households, couples without children, people living alone, and also more older people, with a smaller proportion living in traditional family groups, more people wanting to live in the city centre or in places really well served by public transport. This fits too with our quality principles about how we can make our existing and new communities happier, healthier and stronger, and making sure people have easy access to all the facilities and services they need. This isn't about redeveloping existing areas, but thinking about how some sensitive and selective new development within the urban area and other places could help to give current and future residents access to more and better services, including public transport. It's about making sure the character of existing places is retained and valued. There are some great examples of how that has happened throughout Milton Keynes' history, so we have plenty to learn from locally. Throughout all of this, we need to keep the green character at the centre of things, maintaining and extending our strategic parks and blue infrastructure network, the lakes, river and canal, as well as having high quality, well-used local spaces within development areas, and also think about the role that green infrastructure plays for biodiversity and carbon offsetting. Thinking about sustainability more widely, new homes should meet the highest standards of sustainable construction, but we should also think about how communities are designed to help meet our challenging carbon reduction targets. So how can we make places that reduce the need to travel by car, that create opportunities for local energy production, and that makes the most efficient use of land and other resources? Milton Keynes is the 12th largest city economy in the UK, with low levels of unemployment and high productivity. There are about 182,000 jobs in the city today, and we think by 2050 another 120,000 or so more could be created. The work that the National Infrastructure Commission did on the Oxford to Cambridge corridor saw this part of the world as being a key place for growth in what they call the knowledge-intensive sector, high-tech, highly skilled professional jobs. We already have a lot of those jobs in this area, and we want to see many more, particularly in CMK as a city centre cluster for employment growth. But we need to make sure local people can develop the skills they need to be able to access these jobs of the future, particularly in the light of increasing automation. Our MKU project is part of this, creating a new university in the city centre that will help to develop a strong local workforce of graduates with excellent skills in cyber, digital, autonomous intelligence, entrepreneurship and design. Similarly, the work that MK College is doing through the Institute of Digital Technology at Bletchley Park will help to create a pathway for students through into higher level qualifications. And at the school level, our Learning 2050 project is helping to tilt the local curriculum and ways of teaching to have a greater focus on STEM subjects, that's science, technology, engineering and maths. But it isn't just about these high-tech jobs and giving our population the skills to access those opportunities. The growth in jobs will also be in the foundational economy, which are all the sorts of jobs that are created in the service sector, education, caring professions, public services and so on. An important part of the strategy then is making sure that the city is an attractive place to businesses in terms of having the local workforce with the right range of skills to fill positions and also being a place that works for those employees, where they have good quality of life and can get around the city easily. We know that many people love the grid road network in the city and we have no intention to change that existing grid, but we do know that the structure of the city can make running an effective high-speed public transport service difficult. For car drivers, it can be pretty easy and fast to drive around, and it's still much cheaper to park in CMK than in most other big centres, plus we have a lot of parking compared to those other places. This means that if you don't need to use public transport in Milton Keynes, you probably wouldn't choose to. It's almost always faster and cheaper to drive and park if you have the option. But we really need to make it easier for people who don't have access to a car to get around, and also make it more attractive for those that do drive to use alternative modes, making access to opportunities far more equitable so that no one is disadvantaged by not owning a car. Making shared and sustainable modes of transport more attractive, like walking, cycling, or using new forms of micro-mobility, like e-bikes or e-scooters, also helps with both sustainability and addressing congestion. You can move many more people in the same amount of space compared to in a car. We've already talked about how we could make new developments more walkable and help to make walking and cycling the go-to option for shorter journeys. One of the main interventions we think the city should focus on for the future is to deliver a mass rapid transit network. People often tell us about the tram or monorail that had been talked about in the early days of Milton Keynes, and we are lucky that we have lots of space to put such a system in. We've done some early modelling of possible routes which indicates that around 90% of the network could actually be segregated from normal traffic by using some of the grid road reservations, which means the vehicles wouldn't get caught up in congestion, devoting one lane on dual carriageways or using one side of the city centre boulevards. Modern technologies too mean we don't need the heavy infrastructure that you would have with a traditional tram, meaning it would be cheaper to set up and could be an autonomous driverless system, which means it's cheaper to run too. Areas around nodes and stops on the network would be attractive places to live, really accessible so you wouldn't need to own a car. We think that transit-oriented development principles would mean that places within the existing city and new communities could be developed or adapted to have a greater concentration of development close to those nodes. This helps to drive up the demand for services, important in making sure that services are viable with plenty of people wanting to use them, and also mean that lots of people benefit from access to a really good service and gives other choices about how to move around. We need to do some more work on phasing, routes, locations of stops, engineering at junctions and so on. We also need to make sure that whatever mass transit system we developed, that it integrates with the wider mobility network across the area, with existing and future bus routes, citywide bike and scooter hire, on-demand minibuses and so on, so that people can seamlessly move between modes and give people more options for moving around. This isn't about making car driving more difficult, it's about making other alternatives more attractive. Today, fewer than 6,000 residents live in central Milton Keynes, and there are about 39,000 jobs in the city centre. It serves a big population already. Lots of people travel some distance into the city to shop or work or go skiing or indoor skydiving. But as the city grows and becomes the heart of an even bigger area, there will be lots more activity here. I mentioned earlier our work with Cranfield University to develop a new university in the city centre, MKU. The university will focus on high-tech subjects, and eventually there will be around 15,000 students, many of them living in university accommodation or in other places in the city or nearby. Having lots of young people spending time in the city centre will bring new life into CMK and help to create all sorts of activity. There are also other exciting projects that are already underway or coming soon, like at Station Square, the new Hotel Latour by John Lewis and the new Santander Digital Hub. But we need to make sure all of these projects are joined up and also work through how the plans for mass transit in the city fit in the city centre, while making sure to be sensitive to the things that are very special about CMK. We're lucky in the city centre that we have lots of space for new development, plus some places where maybe some older, vacant, underused land and buildings could be redeveloped to create some great opportunities. So in the future there will be lots more people living, working, shopping, spending time and studying in CMK. Central Bletchley also has some great opportunities available for new exciting things to happen. Bletchley will be the place where the existing West Coast Main Line Railway intersects with East West Rail that will eventually run between Oxford and Cambridge. There's already work underway through the Central Bletchley Prospectus and the project being developed now as part of the Town Deal funding bid. Some of that work is about addressing the challenges in the layout around the train station where the railway splits the station from the town centre, and also thinking about how Queensway can become a much stronger high street for Bletchley, just as it used to be. So again, lots of opportunities for more people to be living and working in Bletchley as an alternative option for businesses to CMK and other parts of the city. Milton Keynes Council has set out its ambition of being a place of around 500,000 people, and we're thinking about this on that broader metropolitan Milton Keynes geography. About 315,000 people already live within the area today, and in existing plans there are another 41,000 homes already committed. If only those planned homes were built, that alone would take the population to about 400,000 people, with most of that development happening much before 2040. So, working back from that broad 500,000 population and the number of homes that are already planned to come forward, we estimate around 46,000 additional homes would be needed. They wouldn't all be built between 2040 and 2050, of course. They would be added to the existing planned trajectory of development over the next few decades. It's important to remember, though, in line with the way that MK has always developed, that this isn't just about building houses, it's about communities, neighbourhoods that have a mix of uses, places to work, green and blue infrastructure, schools, shops, community and health facilities, and that are well served by public transport. This graph models what that growth trajectory might look like in terms of number of homes built each year. The dark teal shows the homes already in plans, with the lighter colour showing the additional development that would be allocated through future local plans, keeping the annual delivery rate about where it is at the moment across that wider area. Within Milton Keynes, we already have some major development sites under construction or going through the planning process. This plan shows where those major sites are located. And across the wider area, there are other major sites that are going through the planning process. This map shows the outline of those growth areas, many in our neighbouring authority areas. The recommended spatial strategy looks to these existing growth locations and enhances those further where appropriate, for example east of the M1 motorway. The strategy then recommends some sensitive and selective development in locations where it can help to share benefits with the existing community, for example helping to support new or improved local services and importantly to support enhanced public transport through our mass rapid transit network. CMK and Bletchley are obvious places where this provides a great opportunity. But there are many others and we need to do lots more work to identify the most suitable locations for that to happen. And finally, there are places beyond the existing urban area where we think there are opportunities to create well-designed new communities that would be based around mass rapid transit and other infrastructure, for example East-West Rail, so they are well connected to existing places. This map sets out how these different growth typologies could be put together in a spatial framework for growth over the next 3 decades. As I said at the outset, some of these areas are outside Milton Keynes Borough, and we absolutely recognise that development in those locations needs to be considered through local plans of those areas. We have put this pattern of development forward as something that seems sensible in the light of projects like East-West Rail and things that are already in local plans. We know there is a lot of uncertainty about things like the expressway project, and we will need to consider what effect there would be of that project not coming forward. There are always things like this that are uncertain in the development of any long-term plan or strategy, but the important thing is to maintain some flexibility while working towards the bigger picture. Finally, we've been thinking about how this strategy is delivered. We think there should be more democratic leadership than normally happens through the usual planning process, which is largely in the hands of the house building industry. The early growth of Milton Keynes was led by the Development Corporation, who had different powers to the local council and could secure funding and build infrastructure in ways that we can't today. There is the opportunity to create new mechanisms that could do that sort of thing. So we're going to do some work to look into new alternative models and partnerships that could have those powers. That includes working with the development industry and with our neighbours to think about how we can work together to bring forward development in the right way. We also recognise there is still a lot of work that needs to be done to look at all the infrastructure that we need to support development moving forward, including how we make sure that the hospital, surgeries and schools can grow with our population. We are working on a programme of work to support the delivery of the strategy for 2050 and the development of our new local plan, and making sure that everything is planned properly and well coordinated. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. Please have a look at the full strategy for 2050 online. There's a lot more detail than I've covered here. And have a look at the FAQs list we've added to the website too, which covers some of the questions we received at our public meetings and on social media. We've extended the deadline for your comments, and while we can't get out to public meetings, we'll be trying to host more online opportunities for engagement. We'll then take some time to review all the feedback we receive so we can improve and revise the strategy, ready to adopt through our Cabinet and Council later in the year. We'll also share information with our planners who are preparing the new local plan, as they are already working on the review of Plan MK. Have a look at mkfutures2050.com for all of the information on how to get in touch. We look forward to hearing from you.